Hello and welcome to this week's video. On Friday the committee members of the radio club that I'm in went up to a place called Castlemaine. And Castlemaine is halfway between Bendigo and Melbourne, and it is about 80 kilometres away from Ballarat where I am. We cleared at a late gentleman's garage and a couple of bits and pieces in the house too. Most of it is scrap. It's pretty bad condition. A lot of it seemed to have been stored for at least 20 years. I came across a couple of newspaper pieces dated to 1972, and it filled my car, it filled another person's station wagon, it filled a big trailer, a utility, a small van, a very large van, and yes, we were there most of the day, the stuff. There was plenty of redbacks to keep us on our toes, and a lot of dead insects as well. So we brought it all down to our club venue, and we had a big sale yesterday of all the bits and pieces. There was a lot of consoles, which are the big old radios with the chassis in the top and a great big speaker, maybe 12-inch down the bottom. They stand on the floor. I spent about $100 on bits and pieces from that, and I brought home a whole lot more of free stuff from the end of the day. A lot of that free stuff at the end of the day was going to the tip, unfortunately, but that is life. I also bought a Grundig Satellite 2000, and that needs quite a bit of work too. And I'm starting on that because it was working this morning when I plugged it in on FM only, and the AM dial wasn't moving at all. It is well and truly gunked up and stiff. I've already broken a tuning knob from it, unfortunately, but it's very brittle plastic. On another note, I picked up all the valves. These are EL3NGs, which apparently are the equivalents of EL33s in Australia. Philips must have been onto a good thing in the 1940s and 50s with this 3-colour printing, because the only ones of these sort of packets I've seen are the plain blue ones. Oh, well, these may have come in from overseas. Just wondering. These are new old stock. No, they're made in Australia. So yes, new old stock. Not cheap, but hopefully they'll do the job. Okay, let's get into the video. So here it is. It was, as I said, working on FM at least. It wasn't working on shortwave 3 to 10, which is the drum. And this is stuck. So I was told that the dial cord had come off. The tuning condenser actually turns, so it might well be the cord. Now I'm not sure if you can see the light on FM. So this is slightly different to the one that Manuel has done, the 2100. And this is the power switch. This is a light when you're on battery. This turns the whizzer off, or the tweeter, or the high frequencies off. This is the phono and the tape input. This is long wave, medium wave, short wave 2, which operate here. Shortwave 3 to 10 work on the turret, and FM, which is down here. Now the tuning indicator works beautifully, so we are tuning in stations. I haven't got the aerial up because that is really valuable. The sliders here were absolutely noisy, to say the least, but since I've moved in here, I'm not getting any sound out of it. So something has gone amiss. Oh, by the way, this one is the antenna trimmer. I'm not sure why that is working on FM, and there's a battery test there, but it's on AC. Now I've already gone ahead and pulled the back off of it. It's pretty simple. This is one heavy radio. It's fairly clean in here, but yeah. So our 240 volt comes in here through the voltage selector and the fuse. There's a couple more fuses up there. Not quite sure what they do, whether they're something to do with the battery or the main switching. There's a little transistor down there, which seemed much larger on Manuel's 2100. That's the output for the amplifier, I guess, and there's another transistor there. So this should be working. Now what I'm going to do is take it out of its cabinet. The whole thing comes out, but it's a little bit different to the 2100. So I'm going to have to scratch my head on this one, and I'll get back to you. I'm not going to recap it at this stage, especially that power board there. That's the amplifier and the volume, bass and treble, because I don't have all the caps, I don't think, but we'll see how we go. I'm running very short on modern caps. So this is the first step. It's the piano keys on the top, and they're just sprung mechanically. So there's nothing special about these. And it reveals the switches there. So that will be one of the first things I do, is clean these switches because they were particularly noisy. So the second thing to do is to remove a connector to the antenna, and that will come off reasonably easily. right. Yeah, that's okay. Maybe it won't come off reasonably easily. It's hitting the plastic part down there. So they may have changed that. So we'll take the screws out around the cabinet and we'll be back. Okay, this just drops down. Looking at the screen on the camera, make sure you can see it. So that will come down. And this should go through there. There we go. These are incredibly expensive to buy apparently. So I won't be damaging that. The next two screws to be removed are this one, which for some reason has been marked with an X on this heat sink, and there's one down below. So I'll take those out. We also have a screw up there, which goes in between these two switches. Now when you take the sliders off the front, you can see they slot into the control itself, not onto the shaft. Now to remove the shortwave turret, there is a grub screw down in there, or a collar that holds the collar in. So the grub screw is there. Now it should just simply lift out if I've got all the screws. Now finding something to grab onto. Actually, there's something down here as well. This piece is just to, you turn it around and it stops the radio falling forward. Oh, okay. And there's two screws down here. So these are longer ones. And theoretically, or should just come out. Oh no, there's another one down in there. This one's coming out, or is it? Now all the trim is falling off of this. The glue has died. So it's not the dial string because that is intact. It must be this shaft here. And where does that go? Oh, it goes down to there. Are these interconnected? I believe they're interconnected. So first I'll try a bit of isopropyl on it. And clean all the gunk off, because the last thing I want to do is restring this thing. Looks very messy. And I'll try a little bit of brute force. See if I can crack the... No. Even that's not turning it. I have turned it about 2 degrees, but the plastic around it is beginning to crack. I'll go down here where the joint is and squirt some oil in. I'll let that seep in for about 5 minutes while I go and get a cup of tea, and I'll be back. Well, it's 10 minutes later, and we'll see if this has freed up any. Yep, a little bit, but it's still incredibly stiff. A little bit better, but I don't want to mash this up too much. So we'll see if it will turn with the knob. Just, okay. Right. Come off. Knew that would happen. That is very brittle plastic. So I'm going to put some more oil down in there. Right, still can't turn it by hand. Getting there slowly. Must have had grease or something in there that's hardened. The risk of breaking them all. I'll try this one. Okay, so it's still very, very stiff, but we can at least move this along. Okay, so we know the power supply is working because there's globes, and it was working before on FM. Now there's diddly squat from the amplifier. These are terrible sliders. You can see why they changed it back to rotary knobs on the 2100. Now I remembered that I scored the box with all wires. It's just packed full of wires, and I remember there was a couple of DIN plugs in there, and they're not particularly good. We didn't catch on to DIN plugs here because everything had RCA plugs, or as an alternative, be careful, all the equipment either had RCA plugs or RCA and DIN. So I don't have any, or maybe one DIN plug somewhere. So this is actually quite a good score. And they all seem to be 5-pin jobs. Pins are still very badly tarnished, but they should be good enough for us to test. Right, 1, 2, 3, 4 switches along. 1, 2, 3, 4. And not a sausage. So there's something more wrong with this. Maybe resistor is blown or something. So I'm going to have to take that module off with the power supply and the amplifier. So this red and green twisted pair go to the third switch along, and this one's connected to the top left lug, and the green is connected to this pin down here. Lug, a black wire up here, and below the black wire is the green wire. So this board is attached with 5 screws. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Need to desolder these tabs down here for the battery, which isn't the most practical thing to do, but has to be done. That's 1,000 at 16 volts. And is that going to be able to fit in there? I think it might. Oh, no. No. So all the caps on this board will need to be replaced. I assume the bridge rectifier here is okay. This is a 220 microfarad at 16 volts. This is a 1,000 at 16 volts. 47 at 16, 22 at 40, 220 at 16, 47 at 16, and there's this large one up here, which I can't quite see. So it's a 2,200 at 20 volts. So what I'm going to have to do is order those. They'll take at least a week to get here because I order from Mouser in America. They are actually cheaper if you purchase enough stuff over about $80 or something like that. I'll also check these transistors here, because it definitely seems like there is something died in the amplifier section. And what I'll also do is I'll try and see if there's no, that won't work, will it? What I was thinking of doing was actually getting a board from the Satellite 2100, the later model, which is a much better arrangement. Has a preamp and all sorts of things in it. But it doesn't have the silly sliders. It has the round pots. And I don't think I won't be able to modify the cabinet. Yes. 47 and 35, which will be fine. Oh, hang on, 0.4. No, 47 at 35. So I might just replace these two capacitors and see what happens. Well, you never know your luck. I just switched it on to test it, and while this is it's just gone silent again. Okay, so I'm going to change the other one while I'm in there, and we'll put it back together again and see what happens. Well, because this is a bit dodgy hanging here, it seems to be shorting against something, but it's all plastic, so I'm not sure what's happening. Okay, give me 30 seconds. Rightio, so that's in. Let's see if this improves things any. Oh, the speaker wires have come off. Okay, we have sound. It's FM, what about medium wave, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 switches across. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that's still as stiff as a board. Yes. Oh. Well, we have reception at least on AM. I don't have any sort of aerial on it. I'm not quite sure how the aerial arrangement works. So what I'll do is put this amplifier power supply board back on to the chassis. All good, but there is quite a pronounced hum at 50 Hertz, as if something is not connected. I don't know quite what it is because everything is connected. So if I very gingerly take the volume up a bit, actually it's not too bad. Tone controls seem to be working.
Like we talked about the press in Sydney in the 1930s, one of the primary sources for Iris. Fiona has referred to the press as less than reliable.
Well, the media was hugely powerful. The print media was as powerful in those days as if we imagine today all the different social media sources combined with the traditional media, that's how powerful the tabloid media was in those days. Tabloid media was media that about criminals. The respectable
okay.
broadsheets like The Age and the Times in a telegraphic way. They would have in court and, you know, maybe a couple of paragraphs, and that was about
That's
it. So
interesting.
the tabloid media
I don't know whether you can
was the
see
media that really told
the
stories
speaker
about
going
people
berserk down
involved in
there
the crimes, and there was no
when it's tuned in.
as there are today. There was a lot of sensationalism. Yeah, bloody.
And nothing gets me down.
It was a real breakthrough to find her voice, and then as I read more and as I redrafted the novel more, that got crafted into that vernacular. I should say that even though it is written in 1930s criminal vernacular, I think it's still pretty recognisable as an Australian colloquial voice. The third person sections really relate to the courtroom scenes and the jail scenes, so it's like the voice of authority. And I'm playing with the idea also as third person, this idea of supposed objectivity that we attribute to third person, that we might even attribute to, some people might go into this book with this thing for true crime, and I'm playing with the idea of objectivity because the third person narrative portions actually do get into the heads of the characters just as much as any of the first person ones do, along with all of their attendant bigotries and peccadillos.
Iris is the book concentrates on a couple of years in Iris's life, but she lived on till 1953, admittedly dying at a relatively young age. Tell us about the after the book closes.
So after the book closes, she's had this significant relationship with a young sex worker called Maisie Matthews, and that's something that she tries to keep hidden, not just from the police because of how they'll crack down on her, but also from her peers. Even in the criminal world, it's not acceptable at all.
It's greater than I got feelings of
Actually, for Canadian. So she ends up doing along.
Well, it still needs quite a bit of work. I'll order the capacitors and we'll see what happens when they come in a couple of weeks. Okay, see you next time.